Hello, I'm Dane, and in this introduction to the channel, I first want to frame that the choice to kill ourselves and the choice when to do so and how to do so, if we decide to do so, are all some of the most important choices we have the capacity to make, right? Right up there with whether or not to get married, who to get married to, whether or not to have a child. This is an incredibly important decision that will affect not only you, but in all likelihood, in its ripple effect, hundreds of other people around you and around family members who will be affected. Because it is such an important decision, it's important to respect what I would call a good quality of decision making, right? And so please, if you are in an extraordinary amount of pain, when naturally your tunnel vision is focused on nothing else, right? When we tend to be overwhelmed, when we tend to be anxious, when we tend to be in a lot of pain, that's often when we turn to thoughts of how to escape. And when it's not easy, there's always suicide, right? And there's a variety of different things, but suicide is one of the options. However, because it is such an important decision that has so much impact for a lifetime, your lifetime, and the lifetime of all of the people, family members, lovers, partners, friends, colleagues, because it affects so many people for so many decades, it's really important to slow the decision down so that you can make a good decision, so you can make a competent decision. Now, I also want to highlight something that for some reason didn't always occur to me in suicidal states and that may not occur to you, but it's this, right? If you are on the brink of suicide, that is going to have so much impact on so many people that it makes sense to open up and unpack choices that we wouldn't normally consider being available. As an example, right? I had never been drunk, never taken a psychedelic in my life, never been high. And when I was seriously going through the process and pros and cons of committing suicide at one point, it struck me that you can't undo being dead, right? That's about as final a decision as one can make. So it's worth trying. It's worth exploring some of the things that we might normally not consider. Meaning, if you have the choice between breaking the law and being dead, it's better to break the law, right? But these things don't necessarily occur to us. It didn't necessarily occur to me, but I thought, it's actually against the law to commit suicide, right? It's a bit bizarre that that's the best that our culture can do is criminalize and the last escape rather than reduce the pain of its members, of its population to a point where it would not be a desirable option. Like nobody is born and says, oh, good, I hope I can grow up one day so that I can commit suicide. It's a tremendous tragedy of a culture to produce portions of its population, a percentage of its members that actually want to kill themselves. That is a failure of any cult, of any culture, right? And it's not a good, it's nothing to be proud of. We live in a culture that creates people every single year that want to kill themselves. In other words, that creates massive amounts of pain for people, and then creates so little education, so little psychological literacy, that they look around and say, I'm in massive amounts of pain, I don't want to feel this, what can I do? And the best option they can think of is to kill themselves. That is a profoundly incompetent culture. Psychologically, economically, you name it, right? You can't pay taxes when you're dead. You can't make a contribution when you're dead. It is a profound failure of a cult to consistently produce members who want to kill themselves. And that's the state of our cult, right? And it is a secondary failure that many people in the cult would rather people kill themselves than be inconvenienced. Now, not always, because it's not always that direct, right? You say, I have something to say, not now, right? But when too many people basically communicate that we don't want to hear the problem, we don't want to respond to the issues, and the pain keeps rising, the message that somebody considering suicide gets is they'd rather me die than actually take the time to hear or do anything about these issues that are so painful, right? So that is both true and it's not true. I mean, most people, if they really thought it through or knew that was the consequence, would make the time to resolve the issue, right? But it's pretty dysfunctional that it can get to that point, and it does for a lot of people. So, I give you permission without physically harming other people to do things that relieve your pain to a point where you can make a good decision, where you can live, right? If you have to decide between misery and stealing $1,000, statistically, like if you make it through and become useful in some way and pay taxes, it's like you're going to give a lot more back alive and learning from the experience. And it's like, okay, I couldn't possibly do this or that or the other, and I'm dead, right? And your funeral is going to cost a lot more than $1,000, and so you're not really saving anyone any money, right? If you have to rack up a bunch of credit card debt and get out of a horrendous situation and get halfway across the world where you can regroup, it's never a good idea. Well, see, that's the thing. It is sometimes a good idea to spend foolishly if it keeps you alive, right? So there's all these models of reality that we construct that are generally good, but they're not worth dying over, right? And most people, if you have anyone who cares about you, anyone at all, if you care about you, you will not let yourself die to avoid inconveniencing someone. No one else who cares about you. And if they do not care about you, right? We produce lots of sociopathic people in our cult. If people do not care about you, if they'd rather you die than be inconvenienced, fuck them. Fuck the lot of them. They are not your friends. They are not the culture's friends. They are no one's friends. They are morons in a sociopathic state, right? Now, it takes courage to say, fuck them, they're morons in a sociopathic state. I do not live my life to accommodate morons in a sociopathic state. Fuck them. I'm going to live. I'm going to learn. I'm going to find a way through this, and I'm not going to bow to the conventions that would see me dead. Now that's intelligent. That's intelligent. It is not intelligent what we're doing as a cult, as a culture today. Right? Letting teenagers go through years wanting to kill themselves. Right? Psychological illiteracy is not intelligent. Parental illiteracy. You can have a kid, as long as you're 15, 18, whatever, with zero competency. It's not hard, right? You just put a penis in a vagina. It's not hard. There's no requirements to become competent. Right? That is absurd, right? And that is the state that we're in today, right? So when you have an absurd cult creating an absurd culture, right? Where everyone does this thing, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel good. First of all, that's not your fault, right? It's not your fault. You didn't create all of these sociopathic people. You didn't write all of these laws, right? So, you didn't decide that if you're poor, you don't get health care, right? You didn't decide if you're poor, you don't get good legal representation. None of this stuff is decided by you. You're in a framework, you're in a system, and that system, by and large, is a good thing. Meaning anarchy, chaos is way worse than the system we have. So following the order of the system is generally better than doing whatever, for whatever reason, and ignoring the system. But not when your life is on the line. Anne Frank lied to the Nazis, right? She didn't say, hey, I'm a Jew, I'm here, murder me. She lied. She broke the law, right? And she stayed alive. In other words, your humanity and your life is more important than the absurd protocols that, by and large, are better than nothing, right? So it was against the law to explore MDMA for post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Go figure. The best medicine out there, against the law. It was against the law to grow psychoactive mushrooms and microdose to lift some of the depression, right? But here's the rationality. You can always kill yourself later. No one's going to stop you. Right? And so I'm walking you through the process that gave me alternatives that are rational, right? Because it is not rational to live in massive amounts of pain that no one is able or willing to do anything about, including you, indefinitely, and do nothing. Taking one's own life to escape massive amounts of inevitable chronic pain is intelligent, right? But it's not intelligent to rush into it, and it's not intelligent to be quick with the analysis, right? And so the conversation that I had with myself is, right, I've got a lot of skills, I've got a lot of resources. Am I sure that there's no place on earth that I wouldn't want to live? Right? Am I sure? Now, I knew there was no place on earth that I knew of, but had I traveled around enough to really know that? And no, I don't like going into debt, and no, I don't want to pay high interest credit card, but do I want to die? Right? Because, which is worse, right? Because you can't come back from death, but you can come back from bankruptcy, or you can come back from paying off debt. But you can't come back from death, right? So it's a more important decision, and so even if there's a 20% chance that spending a lot of money, and then you're going to die anyway, it's better for the world, particularly if you document it. I mean, this is, a really, really big blind spot in our cult. We're not listening. Nobody's sending a monthly survey, and your town, your city, your parents, your friends, no one's sending a survey and say on a 1 to 10 scale, how much would you like to die this month? Right? We have a don't ask, don't tell cult. In fact, we not only don't ask, we shame people for bringing it up. So the number rises in the dark. That is incompetent. Any accountant would be sacked at a corporation that let debt and high expenses rise without mentioning that it was threatening the company. They would be sacked. And yet we do this with our people. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. So I want to suggest that 90% of the time, there is a way through that obviously you don't know about, and that's not your fault. Nobody informed you, by the way, if you find yourself in so much misery and nobody wants to listen and no one wants to talk, here's what you should do. Nobody informed you, right? In fact, I did a YouTube search, right? YouTube is probably one of the bigger repositories of human knowledge and insight on the planet today. It's only around 40 videos on the entirety of YouTube, right? You've got more Mr. Beast videos than you've got videos that are helpful for someone in a suicidal state. In other words, we're not doing our job as a culture, and that's not your fault, right? So that's why, even though I'm not a psychologist, even though this has nothing to do with my profession, even though I have no formal credentials, I'm making videos that I would appreciate hearing. I'm articulating thoughts that are sometimes hard to think when you're in so much pain you go into tunnel vision and all you can think about is the quickest and fastest way to end the pain. It's hard to think when you're in massive amounts of pain. I understand. I get it. So I'm going to do the thinking for you, right? You can listen. You don't have to think. And if any of it makes any sense, it's better to delay. So that's what I'm asking and encouraging you to consider. Delay the suicide for 6 months. Go into coping mechanism, right? If you're an opioid addict, if you're in massive amounts of pain and whatever, manage the pain. Don't add to it, right? Get your pain to a point where you can think. Get out of an abusive situation. Don't worry about the future because death is finite. Right? If you kill yourself, you don't have to worry about the future, and you can always do it later. Give yourself 6 months, a minimum of 3 months. Give yourself a year. And patiently walk through this process and just see, is there a way? Because if there isn't, right? If I'm too dumb to anticipate your situation, if I'm too dumb to understand who you are, if what I've gone through just doesn't connect, you can always do it later. You have that power. You have that freedom, and no one can take it away from you. Well, they can lock you up and do this and do that. But if you're determined, no one can take that away from you. Right? It's an important freedom. You know? Terminal cancer, misery, loneliness, no way of doing anything about it. It's an important freedom to be able to die in the manner you choose, at the time that you choose, right? But that freedom can be abused when you have chronic, short-term pain and you don't know the other ways out of it, and then you lose decades and affect hundreds of people's lives. Or it can be abused when your culture does not show you the different paths, the alternatives, and you remain in massive amounts of pain, right? Or it doesn't educate you on the reality. Like many people who kill themselves believe that everyone will be better off. But that is a lie, right? Now, people may pretend or act like they'd be better off if you don't tell them about the pain, right? But as soon as you kill yourself, it has an enormous impact, way, 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 way bigger than if they had listened to whatever, right? And so that's other people being dumb and cruel, right? And psychologically illiterate. It's not their fault either. This is, in many ways, a dumb, psychologically illiterate culture. We do tons of stupid things that if we really knew, right, how to facilitate sustainable well-being, we would say this is nuts. And we do it again and again and again. So, right, and that stupidity, it's not your fault. Right? But it does, there are a couple of things that you have that very few people have that are valuable if you're considering death. One of them is you can take huge risks. Like you might say, my passion is I want to sing. And everyone around you may accurately say that, 99% of the people who sing, they don't make any money, they fail, nobody listens to them. And that's true 99% of the time. And so, if you have a happy life as a contractor or whatever, or, house painter, whatever, if you have that thing and then you say, well, there's a 99% chance I'd lose my house if I became a singer, but that's really what I'm interested in. You see, you have nothing to lose when you're considering death. In other words, you can say, I'm going to go for it. 99% of the chance, the time, there's a good percentage likelihood that I'm going to fail, and then I'll kill myself at that point. Right? Then you at least went for it, and maybe you win that 1% lottery. Right? So you have that card that almost no one else has, right? Because everyone's afraid of losing what they've got. And the fear of losing what you've got is bigger than the enjoyment of what you've got. This is a prison that 90% of the population is in. 90% of the population, they don't want to lose their house, they don't want to lose their job, but they're not enjoying either, right? They're not enjoying, but they're hanging, right? Well, you've crossed the line. Fuck it, right? This is so terrible that I'd rather die than have all this. So you've got a freedom, and that's something that you can use, that I have used, to make massive changes that would that felt scary, but they now make sense. Okay, there's a 10% chance this would win. What do you got to lose? I'm either going to die or I'm going to take that 10% chance. It's an easy bet at that point, right? Don't go off traveling. It's an irresponsible thing to do. Maybe, right? But it's better than dying, right? So I really want you to think about not what you should be doing, but all that you could be doing that's worth living for if possible, right? Maybe you'd enjoy going to India and curing 100 kids of blindness, glaucoma, cataracts, and all that. Right? I don't have the money. Yeah, but I've got a credit card. 100 kids will be left with eyes. Maybe one of those kids says something and you realize, okay, life's worth living. What an irresponsible thing to do. They quit their job. They let the house go, they went off to India. How outrageous, says the cult, right? That's a dumb cult, right? That hasn't calculated the cost of your death, right? You still wouldn't have been in your job if you were dead. You still wouldn't have had your mortgage payment if you were dead, right? And there'd be a $10,000 funeral, right? So, right? Don't be fooled, in other words, by the stupidity of your cult. Don't expect a psychologically illiterate cult to be intelligent. Don't use it as your guide. If it's taking you over the edge, don't do it, right? So, right, I still have the option to kill myself. That's available anytime, right? I woke up and one of the impetuses of making this channel today, I wanted to die today, right? It's not the first time, probably won't be the last time, right? But I know I'm getting better at kind of navigating the terrain and knowing what to knowing what to do about it, how to think about it, right? So don't expect yourself to have the skill to navigate this terrain, right? Your cult hasn't taught you, right? Don't ask, don't tell. That's pretty dumb. That's about as dumb as it gets, right? So don't expect them. So there's, this is the best, the information I'm going to be sharing in this video is the best information that I've been able to find anywhere, right? There are books, there are a variety of issues. That doesn't mean it's the best, it's just the best that I've been able to find, right? And that means that there's a lot better information than what I'm going to be sharing out there, right? Right? That just like you, I can't find it. I haven't located. Maybe I haven't put enough energy into it. But you deserve, right? You deserve 3 months or more to put that energy in, right? So I would say, number one, do whatever you have to do to bring the pain down and the fear down where you can think, right? As long as you're not killing someone, raping someone, your life is worth way more to the economy, right? To the government and taxes. Life is worth way more than, whatever little ripple effect from you suddenly, seemingly being so irresponsible. There is nothing more important than your life if you're on the edge of suicide. Nothing. Right? And the worst thing you can do for everyone is to be in so much tunnel vision that you make the successful decision to end the pain in a few minutes, but then cause massive amounts of pain to others, but more importantly, miss out on, potentially decades of, life on the other side of it. So that's really what I want to focus on in this video, is there are ways, right? Now, it's also, by analyzing this, you may be innocent. Like if you're in medical pain that cannot be alleviated, et cetera, you know, all I have is my experience. Don't listen to anyone, right? Who doesn't get you, who doesn't understand you. That's why I say 90% of the time, it's going to be more useful for you to look at the information, you know, that I'm sharing and any others that you can find that are useful, and relieve the pain, give yourself a breathing window. And even if you decide you're going to kill yourself after 3 months, do it with a bang, right? Do it with some panache, right? I mean, do the best things you can possibly, you know, go to places you've never been, cross off things on your bucket list if that's at all possible, right? And if at the end of all that, right, you say like, you know, that's it, then you're more likely to make good decisions when you're in a good state from all of that. And so thank you for watching this video first, for those that you have. I will complete with a few things that I may go into more detail in other areas. But, you know, for me personally, getting out of the United States and over to Thailand, huge release in pain, right? 300% improvement in well-being, more empathy, etc., in that culture than, you know, in most of the Western cultures that are far more analytical, and in that analysis without empathy are far more sociopathic, right, than an emotionally based empathic culture. So just going there adds 300% of breathing room, right? Psychoactive mushrooms, which thankfully are becoming more and more decriminalized in the United States, because it's so important to be informed, right? A very, very low dose of sub-psychedelic mushrooms can have a huge impact, right? It can lift my mood and allow me to see insights with, you know, in a way that makes me a better driver. There's no flashing lights, you know, psychedelic colors or anything like that. You know, a microdose, like 1/10 of a normal dose. And look into all these things. I know it's hard to digest information when you're in massive amounts of pain, but a microdose of mushrooms can make the difference between depression or not, right? Ketamine, which is, again, more legal, right? It's better than death is what I'm getting at, right? I wasn't interested in psychedelics. I never wasn't interested in being high, but it's better than death, right? And there is good evidence that psychedelic-assisted therapy with good practitioners, bad ones can make things much worse. I had a bad one, and things got much worse, right? But good, right? And so that's the problem when you're in urgency. Try to alleviate a lot of your physical pain initially by getting into a safe and beautiful environment, and cut off from negativity. Like if all those messages, because people are going to try and get you to do your job, right? They're not interested in your life. They're interested in you paying that bill, doing this, whatever, right? So cut it off, right? Put your life first. Throw your phone away for a bit. Get a new SIM card. Get somewhere where you can cope. And then understand that, you know, you don't know what to do in this situation. Neither does anyone else, right? So it's a new roadmap, but you can't design and think when you're in massive amounts of pain. You know, so I'll just rattle off a few things that have been useful to me that you may or may not have considered, right? So travel to Thailand, microdosing psychoactive mushrooms, low to medium dose MDMA, pure MDMA, not stuff cut with other things. It's so tragic that we don't have access to pure effective medicine, with all the black market stuff. Be aware of that. Start very low dose, right? Of course, if you're going to kill yourself that day, right? Risking a high dose is probably better than dying that day, right? But if you can, start at a very low threshold, notice its effect and get to know it and know how it affects you, right? Put everyone else off, cut off if necessary. Just if you can't face people and say no, take the SIM card out of your phone, drive somewhere, right? Do not let the clamoring desperation and negativity of other people, right, push you into that place where you can't handle it and you die, right? Because you're not going to be any use to them if you're dead anyway, right? They may not be intelligent enough to realize that, or intelligent enough to realize how they're pushing you into that place, but it is the reality. You're not actually doing anyone a favor by dying. So, if you can't face them, if they're too dumb to listen, take the SIM out, give yourself a breather. Get off of social media. That is statistically correlated to make people miserable. Right? The more hours a teenager spends on Facebook, the more likely they are to commit suicide. Just get off of all that. The news is not the news. It's adrenaline pumping stories about other people's misery that often has very little to do with you. Get off the news. Massage, incredibly useful. Orgasm, very useful. You don't need another person. Masturbation. Massage, masturbation, orgasm, soothing music, nourishing food, a good night's sleep, hot springs, cold plunges, right? Peace, being in nature, getting out of the din, right? Get into nature. Do something you love, right? So have some peace. Think about anything out there that you want to live for, right? Wouldn't it be fun to cure 100 people of cataracts before dying, or give someone an amputation thing so they can do a job, or go around and teach something that to homeless people or whatever. Like, find something, that's fun for you, that's meaningful. Because when you're in massive amounts of pain, a pair of sneakers are not going to cut it. Right? Having a Gucci handbag, fuck that. Right? That's when you realize the joke of materialism. Right? When you're in massive amounts of pain, feeling traumatized, lonely, you realize the sheer stupidity of the cult that you're in. It's not going to do it. Right? Don't look for it. Right? If you're in minor amounts of pain, maybe going shopping or something can give you a little dopamine for a few hours, but not suicidal levels of grief and pain. Right? Get the fuck out of a cult that's that dumb. Go to a place where there's real meaning, right? Because if you can transform a family's life, right? If you can stop a woman from being raped, if you can help a child heal trauma, right? Those are things that you might be willing to put up with a fair amount of pain for, right? But not writing a check to some abstract thing. Go somewhere where you can make a difference that's meaningful to you, right? Give some gift to strangers, right? Go to a rural place. People tend to be more intelligent, more empathic, more psychologically attuned to other people in small villages, etc., rather than in cities. Cities train you to be sociopathic. Small towns train you to be empathic. You need lots of love for yourself and for others. Get out of the city, go to a small town, right? Go to Nepal, right? So these things create the space. Then you can go through your options. Are there any things I'm willing to live for? Right? Is there anything worth living for? Is it possible? What if I did this? What if I did that? Right? And don't worry about other people and what they demand, right? Because that's often why you're dying, is you feel so miserable because you're pleasing all these other people, and it's not worth living. So you want to kill yourself. Well, then you're not going to please them either. You might as well have the guts to say, fuck it. I know you're too self-centered, too dumb, too psychologically illiterate to give a damn about the massive amounts of pain and loneliness that I'm in. Go fuck yourself. But you're not going to get anything if you want if I'm dead either. Right? So this is, and it's not for everyone, right? Obviously, if you're in the role of the, quote, villain, right? You've killed various people, you feel ashamed of it, etc., then this is not, in that role, right? But if you're basically getting smaller and shriveling up to a point where you don't want to live rather than offend other people, then getting in touch with your anger, with your hostility, with your aggression and your hate could be a lifesaver. It's not much fun to hang out in aggression and hate or revenge for very long, but if it keeps you alive, if it keeps you alive for a month or two until you can get into a better place, or even a year, and then you begin pivoting to something that's a lot more enjoyable, love, generosity, kindness, excitement, enthusiasm. These are all way more fun states to hang out than revenge and hate and blame, right? But hate, revenge, and blame are still better than death, right? And they can be a pivot point. Right? You can get good, right? You can get motivated to be competent and motivated to get strong so that you can have your revenge. Once you're strong and competent, you'll have other choices available to you, and you have to evaluate, like, do I really want to dedicate my life to revenge, or now that I'm strong and competent, I could have a lot more fun, right? Do this and this, right? That's something you can evaluate. But generally speaking, you are going to do more harm to yourself and everyone else by dying than by being spiteful and living, or taking revenge and living, or blowing up a few credit cards and declaring bankruptcy. Generally speaking, you will do far more harm over the period of decades, as a result of not being there, and your knowledge and your insights not being shared with other people.